Hi, everyone. I'm jumping in real quick to let you know this interview with Dr. Sellers was so interesting and information-packed that it'll be part of a two-part episode. Part one is an introduction to Dr. Sellers, and part two is focused more on advice from her personal experience. Part two will be released in August. Now to introduce Dr. Sellers.
Lisa Sellers, PhD and CEO of Vector Laboratories, is an accomplished leader and mentor with more than 20 years of experience in the life science industry. Dr. Sellers has an exceptional track record of spearheading successful business strategies based on unmet market opportunities while prioritizing the development of a people-first work environment. Before joining Vector Laboratories, Dr. Sellers provided consulting services for a variety of life science companies to guide them in accelerating product development and commercialization and entering new markets. Dr. Sellers has served in executive and senior management roles in marketing, sales, and specific product lines for companies such as Thermo Fisher Scientific, 10x Genomics, Life Technologies, and Applied Biosystems. Dr. Sellers also serves as an advisory board member with the Lead Scholars Program at Santa Clara University, is a board member with Notre Dame Belmont High School, and an advisory board member, Master of Biotechnology at San Jose State University. She has a personal passion for coaching professionals to navigate job choices in STEM to achieve their potential and provide the utmost in their career fulfillment. As such, Dr. Sellers has been a speaker at ISPE, Navigating Your Career Amidst Uncertainty in December 2020, Women in Products, San Francisco Bay Area for Go-to-Market Series in May 2019, and was featured in CMO.com, Best Leadership Advice Ever Received publication in February 2019. Dr. Sellers was also named a Woman of Influence in 2022 by the Silicon Valley Business Journal. She earned a PhD in chemistry from the University of Colorado Boulder and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Santa Clara University.
Dr. Sellers, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. Congratulations to you, to Vector Laboratories, for its merger with Absolute Biotech to expand your manufacturing, distribution internationally to the UK, to Europe, and your expanded role as CEO.
Yes, it's exciting times. Certainly a lot of work ahead of us, but it is exciting, especially the fact that we have a bigger portfolio, bigger footprint, and certainly a lot more team members too.
So you were very active on LinkedIn with your posts about your upbringing, your family passions, mentoring, I know is a big passion, even some vulnerable admissions about attributes that you had to learn to develop in yourself. And your posts really come across as authentic. I get an understanding of who you are. So just to sort of back up about who you are, tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how that shaped who you've become today.
Yes, it does certainly shape all of us. And for me, I grew up in a blue-collared household. My father worked within a union. He was a painter. My mother was a teacher's assistant. And I think there were two aspects I think that really influenced me. One was neither of them had gone to college. My father had a high school degree. My mother did not. And it turned out that I was fairly good at academics, not so great at sports. And so really the only avenue for me was to pursue education. Not that it was really discussed in our household. It was all about hard work, getting out there every weekend and doing our chores, not being paid for them, but just expected as part of our contribution to the household. And so in going to school, I was fortunate to do well in math and do well in chemistry, and having teachers in both those subjects that supported me, and especially my math teacher, even mentoring me as I was thinking about going to college. I think being surrounded by people who it was natural for them to think about going to college when it wasn't something that was commonly talked about in my household because nobody had experience in that. My brothers didn't go to college. I think just putting yourself in that environment where it was assumed everybody would go to college. I was in that environment, so I just followed everybody. And thank goodness I did, and landed in a good place in pursuing chemistry as my undergraduate and then graduate degree. And again, it wasn't because I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. It was because I had a great mentor in college, and I just followed in her footsteps because I had no idea what to do. I had no idea where to get a job with a chemistry degree, and my family couldn't help me. There's no such thing as networking in our household. Unless I needed to network with the painters union. And so I went to the same graduate school she did, and then luckily landed jobs after that. So that was a big influence. I think also growing up with three older brothers was a huge influence on me, to keep up with them and find the thing that I was great at. They were great at sports. I was not. I was good at schoolwork, and eventually, college became, the degrees became my trophies that I was able to bring home. Since I didn't have those sports trophies growing up, but I'm a bit competitive. I certainly joke around, and things roll off my shoulders rather easily. I like to joke around, and I think a lot of that came from growing up with three older brothers.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that resonates with me too. I know that for me, neither one of my parents went to school, and when you said it was kind of the underlying expectation, that's exactly kind of how I felt. I never knew different. So you just kind of go with that. But then, the next step is, all right, so then from there, where do I go? And it sounded like you had somebody that kind of helped show you the way, or you just were inspired by that person. Um, yeah, those early years can be so powerful, and they really do lay that groundwork for our beliefs and future decisions. They can also shape our core values. So let me ask you, Dr. Sellers, what are your core values?
Yeah, so you can actually go on Vector Laboratories website and see our company values, and those are mirrored both in what I saw at Vector Labs when I came and also myself. Um, Relationships matter. That's core to who I am. You heard in my story of growing up, connecting with teachers, having mentors. Those relationships, even my siblings, right? Those relationships are still important to me today. I reflect on them and how they help shape me, and all the relationships that I have built up, whether it's in a career or in a community. Um, I will maintain those that are closest to my own values, and mirror them and they mirror them in their own day to day lives. I keep those relationships alive and keep those connections. So relationships matter, and they matter in the workplace. We have to spend so many hours with each other, whether it's within the four walls of our building or across the globe with our colleagues or even business partners. I've had many opportunities to make friendships actually with coworkers across the globe and partners. And I enjoy a meal with them, and we sharing things that we have in common that are outside of the workplace. So that's one for sure. And I think being authentic and genuine is, you see it through my posts. I'm very direct and transparent. And I have no issue being vulnerable. It's not weakness. Mistakes and failures are not weaknesses. That's how you learn. I think that's why I liked being a scientist too, because many of the experiments are failures, and you learn from them. And so and I think also just growing up in a blue collar household, and Mexican family, where you just put everything on the table, right? If you're blue collar, you're working incredibly hard. My father worked 7 days a week, lots of odd jobs, just to be able to give us what he wanted. And he didn't hide it, right? That's just who he was and how he had to work. And then certainly in the Mexican family, I mean, everything was on the table, whether it was health, your own issues. We'd openly talk about death. Nothing was really sacred. And it didn't matter who was in the room, kids, adults, he talked about it openly. So I'm kind of that way too. And I think that brings that transparency, genuine authenticity that then allows you to build trust. And
And
it's the
approachability too, right? There's a level of approachability because when most people can relate to a lot of those topics and, they're not sacred. They're things to be okay to talk about. You put them on the table as an opportunity to connect.
Yes, that's exactly right. And connect back to that relationship matters. And those are foundations to then bring people together to deliver excellence, right? And so my family, particularly my children, hear me talk about how, finish what you start, or, don't do something halfway. And so that resonates with, this value around delivering excellence, and why I love these brands like Vector Laboratories that have been around for a long time, and they stand for quality products. I've had those kinds of brands in other roles that I've had at other companies. Is sort of tried and true, always bringing you that quality product, quality support and service. So those are some examples. And as I said, really what we have in Vector Laboratories is also a mirror of what I believe are my core values.
Great. Yeah. So just in summary, you started the top of this with relationships matter. And I think this is a theme throughout how you represent yourself. Social media sounds like in Vector Laboratories, how it's a reflection of Vector Laboratories' core values as well. Authenticity playing into that so that you can enrich those relationships. And then, of course, we can't forget about why we're all here is to deliver for patients. And so following through, finishing what you started, important, because without that's sort of the delivery piece of what you're building on in the first two pieces, in the first two core values. Are there any specific pivotal moments or decisions from your childhood or early career that you recall that had a significant impact on the person that you've become today?
Yeah, I would say, I'd say it goes back to the question of how you were raised, and it really guided on things that I still forged ahead with things. Growing up with all brothers, they were all older than me. And typically in a Mexican household, there's a hierarchy. The men are higher up than the women. And, served first, not having to clean the dishes and clean up. And so this inequality is what I saw when growing up. And I ended up having sort of a chip on my shoulder with it, and always wanted the same things as my brothers. It didn't matter that they were older than me. I always wanted the same things. And so going into, the field of chemistry, I think just seeing very few women around me and very few minorities, I wanted it even more, right? Because I was so driven to having the same as others. And so I think that shaped, it meant that being in that environment didn't deter me.
What I took away from what you were just talking about is the inequality actually tipped you to drive your competitive spirit. It didn't do the opposite of making you feel, that you couldn't be or do or have what you wanted. It actually drove you in the opposite direction, which sounds like it's, really serving you well today.
And also I would say, and so it's also made me sensitive to equality for others, right? And why I have so much passion around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because of that little chip on my shoulder. I want it for others too, right? Because not everybody will fight as much as I have, or be as resilient in those environments when they are the only one representative of their group, whether it's ethnicity or gender. And so that's something that's important to me, and it's wonderful to see it at Vector Labs. So we've got a great set of diversity and experiences, backgrounds, all kinds of different facets of diversity at Vector Labs. So
I can imagine that has to be inspiring for others at Vector Laboratories to see you, a Latino woman, leading that, and also having a lens of appreciation for diversity within the organization and feeling seen, feeling heard. That has to make a difference.
And it's not just, I mean, it's certainly, I do hear it from candidates about myself. But I think what's exciting is when I hear it from them after they've come into the facility for an interview process, or after the new hires started and I connect in with them either over lunch or just check in, and they give me feedback like, we see it. We see it beyond just you. We
The
see it.
ultimate compliment.
Yes, exactly. In the executive team and in the managers, in the day-to-day workers. So I'm incredibly, it's not something that I built. There was already a good amount of diversity at Vector Laboratories. What I helped was ensure that that diversity was there as we moved up in the organization, right? So it's wonderful. I'm incredibly proud of it, and I think certainly the employees that we have enjoy that environment.
I want to transition to some of your career success. So I think now you've heard about Adam Bryant. He was a reporter, wrote a popular column in the New York Times called The Corner Office. He shares this collective wisdom of how ambitious managers make the jump to leadership. So what was your big break to becoming a CEO? Did you actively pursue a specific journey to this position, or did the opportunity just land in your lap?
Yes. Well, okay. I didn't pursue it. And I wouldn't say it just landed in my lap either, because, most of us know that it has been the journey that gets us here. I've been fortunate to land in places that I love doing the job day in and day out. I look forward to Monday. Actually, I look forward to Sunday night preparing for Monday. And it doesn't mean every day is like that. But for the most part, I have been fortunate to love what I do, which means then I give it my all. And I've worked with great people that help me give it my all. And so a lot of it is the journey, and that progression of larger responsibility led me to Vector Labs as the chief operating officer. So I found a love of running businesses, particularly these mature businesses that are not quite the shiny object of the latest and greatest tool. But these mature businesses, they have to, be customer centric. They have to understand that many levers to run the business well in order to be successful, because customers have choice. When you have a mature business, their customers have choice. You're not the only technology in town, and so I came to Vector Labs with this opportunity to come into this, more mature business, and how do you reinvigorate it for greater growth? And certainly that takes strategy, but in order to achieve that strategy, you have to have a great team. I like that combination. And so I came in to help really shape where Vector was going to be going in the next few years. And just things worked out. We were owned by Maravai Life Sciences. There were other businesses that happened to, one in particular took off incredibly well during the pandemic because it had a technology that was feeding into mRNA vaccine production. So it just so happened that then Vector Labs in that portfolio wasn't quite as significant as that. You can imagine a portfolio that's feeding into mRNA production. And so that was then the result of the divestiture of Vector Laboratories from Maravai and the purchase by Thompson Street Capital Partners. And so I was just consumed with carving this business out. I couldn't tell any of my employees, so I was sort of alone in the process with some of the executives in Maravai. And on a call with Thompson Street Capital Partners, the lead had said, hey, Lisa, would you consider being CEO of this business? And I hadn't even thought about me or my role. I mean, I was already overwhelmed with just the whole diligence process and the thought of divesting. And so my response to him was, you've heard my strategy for the business, for growing this business. If you believe in this strategy, then I'm the right person to lead it. If you don't believe in the strategy, then I'm not. I genuinely believed in that, right? I believed in that strategy, and that was part of the overview that I had given him in the process. And so obviously we are on the same page because we've been working together now for a few years, and it's been a great partnership. I've really enjoyed it. It's been different than running a business in a big company, for sure. A lot less resources, a lot more on your shoulders. But it's also been a lot more fun in the sense that I do get direct impact in shaping the company culture, which starts with the talent hired at the executive team, which is one of the first things I had to do. I realized I looked around, there was nobody else. Need to hire an executive team, and now with the merger, it's even bigger. So yeah, so it wasn't purposeful, but it's all made sense.
This natural progression, essentially, right? So, yeah, you had your head down, you were doing work, but that was recognized. You weren't trying to position yourself. Someone else recognized that in you, and you saw that this business had potential. And it sounds like you're here to sort of, I don't know about revitalize, if that's the right word or not, but invigorate. um, and keep it progressing into this, now it sounds like, more mature phase that it's in.
Yeah, many of us that have been in this kind of position like to talk about transforming it, because Vector Laboratories was really focused on serving the academic researchers looking at immunohistochemistry, protein markers, and tissue samples. And now we continue to do that, but now we've evolved to really being this B2B company providing reagents that help other researchers, other companies label, detect, or conjugate for within their products. And more recently, offering these linkers that feed right into antibody drug conjugates. So it's been a transformation from where we've been for the last 45 years to where we're going. But it all stems from what have been our core capabilities and how do you shift them from where you were in the past to where you want to go, much like talent, right? You have to know what your strengths are and how do you position it from a job you've been in to a job you want, that might lead you to higher growth and more opportunity. No different with what I've been working here at Vector Labs to do.
Yeah. Sounds like you needed a really strong team, yourself at the helm, to have that vision, to see where this is going and mature it, transform it, see it evolve now before your eyes. So I just want to go and talk a little bit about, your personal experiences here. You post, I mentioned, we talked about before, right? You post a lot on LinkedIn, your personal experiences. Can you share with us your biggest vulnerability? And so based on that, do you downplay it? Do you work better at addressing it? How do you work with that vulnerability?
Yes. And you may have to bear with me, but I believe my vulnerability really lies in my strengths, my optimism, and my confidence. Because most people think, oh, that's great. How is that vulnerable? But what it can do is create blind spots for me, because you can imagine if you're overly optimistic and overly confident, you can get yourself into trouble. And so the way that I manage through that is kind of what we just talked about, is making sure you're self-aware and you put people around you. They're going to help you navigate so that you don't have those blind spots, right? Or they'll give you the heads up of, hey, I hear you, Lisa, but let me tell you what you're not seeing or what you're not understanding from the situation. And so that's how I really have to rely on, and this is why the advantage of embracing diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is I'm going to lean on these people to help ensure that I'm not overly optimistic with a plan or overly optimistic of what we're trying to achieve, or overly confident and miss a competitor or some other market dynamic that's going to make us fail. So that honestly is where I think it can be most vulnerable. And so that's where I have to ensure that I vet ideas and approaches and strategies with different folks so that they can help sort of poke holes at that optimism and that confidence, so that, the failures aren't so significant if they happen.
Yeah, the robustness of a plan doesn't rely on one person. It's better to poke holes internally before it gets external, right? So you have a chance
Completely agree.
to pivot.
Completely agree. And it's important. I've had to, over the years, really either teach people that, or when you're hiring people, let them know this is the work environment that I create around me, because I need that, so that I don't have those blind spots. And so people have to be comfortable with doing that, and you have to also, I have to adjust sometimes in allowing people that alone time to reflect, and think through how might they find those holes, and poke into that plan, so that then it can be, and then bring it to a larger group to be robust, as opposed to just on the spot thinking. But I have to make sure that folks that work around me understand that this is a work style, this iteration, and it all comes back to, I think, also the scientific thinking, right? And scientific method is iteration. Getting other, challenging the experimental approach, if you will, or challenging the results and the interpretation of the results, to then what might you do next? Yeah.
I work in quality assurance. We're all about continuous improvement. So you're speaking my language.
Yeah, you get it.
I get it.
Yeah.
This was part 1 of 2 of my interviews with Dr. Sellers. Part 2 is being released in late August. Please tune in for part 2, where we cover leadership advice from Dr. Sellers, including public speaking, inspiring others, delegation, and supporting women and minority groups to attain leadership roles.